I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I just recorded this entire video and it turns out my camera died after only 6 minutes of recording. But whatever, I'm gonna start over. I'm such a rookie. It's fine, we're gonna make it better than ever. What's up, y'all? I'm Logan Mill, and have I got a story for you. Comment if you know what that reference is. So I'm gonna tell you about my two experiences with my neighbors getting robbed just a few months apart. My neighbors were robbed twice. So here we go. So a little bit of background. I go to college with my boyfriend and we have an apartment. I have to explain the layout of the apartment buildings. So we live in a building, it's a big house, but it's apartments inside of a house, if that makes sense. Where my house is, right next to it there's another house, and then there's two other houses, and they're all facing each other. That makes sense? So it's like a square of buildings that have apartments in them. We moved right across from his friends from school. So we all go to the same university together, and we live right across from each other. A few months after we moved right across from the guys, I was working at a restaurant. If I came home from work, my boyfriend was already at the guy's apartment, but on one specific night, I was pretty sure that my boyfriend was at the apartment, and I was about to go straight to their place. But when I pulled into the parking lot of our complex thing, I was walking towards our apartment, and I saw that the light was on in my apartment, so I knew that my boyfriend was there. So instead of going straight to the guy's, I went into my apartment. When I got in, I think I went to my room for maybe a second, but then no more than 30 seconds I had been home. I walked over to the windows to pull the shades down to close the blinds, because that night I closed the blinds because, I'm paranoid. My mom made me paranoid because she closes the blinds every night, but I digress. So I walked over to the windows to close the blinds, and all of a sudden I see one of our friends, let's call him John. My friend John was at the bottom of the window. There's a yard between the two buildings, and he was yelling something to me, and I didn't really know what he was saying. I couldn't understand him. And he was on the phone, and I saw him yelling, pointing at his apartment, and I was like, what's going on? So I tell Luis, my boyfriend, to come over to the window, and then as soon as I said that, it snapped in my head, and I understood that he was saying, call the police. They're getting robbed, as in our friends were getting, his apartment was getting robbed. So I immediately grabbed my phone, I called 911, but I realized I don't actually know what to say to them because I don't know what's going on. So me and my boyfriend run down the stairs, and we meet up with our friend John. We're both on the phone with 911, and I'm like, yeah, my neighbors are getting robbed. We're at this apartment. They asked me what race the robbers versus the people who live there were. Realized it at the time. I was just yeah, get my friends some help. I was kind of freaking out. And I realized later, that's really smart of them to do, because the person on the 911 call with John, they didn't ask him that, but they asked me that, which I thought was really interesting, because of course you should know that, because they should be able to tell that to the responding officers, because they don't know who to be afraid of, who's a threat. What if they saw one of our friends running out of the apartment, and maybe they thought that's the threat because that person's running, and what if something terrible happened? I just thought it was really smart that they said that, because the two guys that were robbing them, there was one really big huge guy and one just normal average kind of size guy. They were both African American, and then all the guys in the apartment were Latino. I told that to the person on the phone, and a few seconds later the cops show up. I think 2 or 3 patrol cars, and they start running into the mix of the houses, and we're pointing at them. We're trying not to yell because we don't want the robbers hear us yelling and pointing they're at this apartment. They go up to the apartment, and we can kind of hear the ruckus now because we hear the officers yelling. And I finally kind of calmed down, and then after a while a cop came over and talked to our friend John and got the information, and he was these guys knocked on the door, and we thought it was our friend, so we opened it because I guess they had invited their friend over. So these robbers knocked on the door, and they opened it, and they just shoved their way through and started punching them and So the guys, one of them had like a bruise on their face, one of them had a fat lip. They flipped their table, they like took their phones, and like it was a whole thing. So anyway, our friend John, the one who got out, the reason he got out was because he was the one who opened the door. So the guys kind of pushed right past him to get to the rest of his friends. And so he kind of just slipped out the door and just ran, which was so smart of him. Like, I feel like I would have been like frozen in the moment. It was so smart that he ran out and like got to call 911 and told us to call 911. The cops ended up arresting the two guys, obviously, because they were still in the apartment when they got there. So they arrested the two guys and left with them. And then all of our friends had to go to the police station to like give their reports or statements or whatever. A few days after that happened, our landlord gave our friends the notice that they had to move out, which I thought was like really kind of messed up because they got robbed. Like, okay, so they're gonna get robbed and then you're gonna make them move out, like rude. It was just because like, I think how the landlord sees it is like, if you're doing something bad so that someone wants to rob you, or like you're bringing around bad people, then she doesn't want you in the apartment kind of thing, which I get it, I guess, but I don't know. It seemed unfair to me. But what happened after that was that we figured out that the two guys that robbed them were actually from our university. Our friends recognized the two guys because they were football players, which is like so stupid. If you're gonna rob someone, just a little tip, don't rob people who know you and can identify you. Come on. Basically, so my friends ended up moving out of that apartment and everything ended with that. So that happened during the school year. Just a few months later, my boyfriend was in Colombia with his family and I was still here working for the summer. And so I was alone in the apartment. And right next to, so like if you walk out our door, then you see another door for the apartment right next to us. And so in that apartment right next to us was a girl, and we had never had any issues with her. Like, she was nice. But while my boyfriend was gone, a guy moved in with her and he seemed kind of sketchy, and like he ended up bringing just like a lot of bad people around. Like, it seemed like they constantly were having parties. It smelled like smoke all the time, so it smelled really bad. And there were people coming to their door like at all hours of the day and night. Like, it was so annoying because we have paper thin walls. So like anytime someone goes up and down the stairs, you hear it. Like, I'm sure my neighbors can hear me talking right now. Sorry. But yeah, I could hear these people all the time coming to the door. I just knew like something sketchy was going on. Like, I had a feeling that they were selling drugs because people were coming to their door all the time, and it just seemed weird, and it smelled like smoke all the time. I knew there was sketchy stuff going on. But then one day, the cops came to their door and knocked on their door and ended up arresting someone that was in the apartment. And I like had my ear to the door, like eavesdropping, because I'm super nosy. I heard the cops say to these guys, like, hey, we're not here for your drugs. Like, we're here to arrest this guy because he was involved in a robbery or something like that. We're not here for your drugs, but like, you need to get rid of this because like something bad's gonna happen. And like kind of warning them, like, if you guys have a bunch of drugs in this house, like somebody's gonna try to come take them. It seemed weird to me that the cops like just brushed it off, but I guess like they are sent out to do one duty. Every time they have to go arrest someone, if they also end up arresting like everyone else that's in the house doing something bad, I see how that could become like an issue. Anyway, so they arrest this one guy and they warn the guys to get rid of the drugs. I kid you not. The next day, the very next day, I am asleep in bed. It was like a Sunday, and I hear someone knock on the neighbor's door. I hear it because, like I said, we have paper thin walls. So when someone knocks on their door, it sounds like they're knocking on our door. So I woke up because I'm a super light sleeper. So I wake up immediately. I look at my phone to see what time it is, and it's 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning. And so I immediately know that's weird because they did have people coming to their house all the time, but like that late at night was a little weird. Like something was off. I just got this really bad feeling in my stomach. And then I hear my neighbors open the door and I hear them like exchanging words, but I couldn't really hear. So I went and like pressed my ear up against the door to hear what they were saying. And then I hear the guys at the door kind of getting louder and like more aggressive, and they're like, let me in, let me in. And so I knew like this was bad. So I immediately text my landlord and I say, hey, I think my neighbors are getting robbed. And then I hear the door like get pushed open. So the guys like got into their apartment. So I call 911 again. I call 911 and I'm like, hey, my neighbor's getting robbed. I'm at this apartment. And it was weird this time because the person on the line kind of like, once I said where I was, she was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, we're sending cops. Like it was no big deal. Like this was just like something that happens here, which like it's totally not. Like this is not a dangerous area, but like whatever. So she kind of says that and she hangs up, which is also weird because usually they stay on the line with you until you see the cops, but she hung up. So I don't know if she's doing her job right. But I hear like all this commotion going on next to me or next door to me. And then all of a sudden I hear thud, 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 which I knew was them running down the stairs. So I go to my window to see who it is. And I see 4 like big guys all wearing hoodies, like all dark clothes, running, like sprinting, 4 of them out. And they jump into this big van that was in the parking lot and they like speed off. Like nothing I've ever seen before. And then the cops roll up, of course. So they totally like miss the bad guys, you know, like these guys were obviously much smarter than the robbers from the first time because they were in the apartment for a long time being stupid. These guys were in and out, like boom. So anyway, the cops come and I open my door once the cops are there and they're like talking to my neighbors and my neighbors are like, are you the one who called the cops? Like kind of mad at me. And I was like, yeah, I called the cops because like, I'm sorry, I'm doing my like civic citizen's duty. Like I'm trying to do the right thing and they kind of seemed mad at me, which like I'm sure was because they have drugs in the house and like they don't want to have cops around them. And but like that's their problem. I was doing the right thing. I hear them my neighbors tell the cops that these guys have guns, which like freaked me out so much because I was like, okay, the last time this happened there were no guns involved. Like those guys had nothing, but like this time it was like a real like scary robbery. But luckily a few days before that robbery happened, my landlord had already told me that she warned them that she was kicking them out. Like she had already told them they were getting out because they were just terrible, like terrible people, terrible neighbors. And so after the robbery happened, they immediately got kicked out. Like I think they had 2 days to get out of the apartment, which was awesome. Like I was happy because they were terrible neighbors and they like kept me up at night and stuff. And obviously they were doing bad things. And then after they left, my landlord ended up like taking the handle off the bottom door. So like to get up to my apartment, you have to go up the stairs. So like you open a door, you go upstairs, and then there's my apartment and the apartment next to me. So down at that bottom door, she ended up taking off the handle and just making it like a lock. And then she gave me the key to the lock. So I was the only one that could get in my stairwell from then on, which like made me feel so safe. Like she's a great landlord and everything's been fine since then. But yeah, like it was just so insane that literally my neighbors straight across from me got robbed. And then I think it was like 4 months later, literally 4 months later, my neighbors right next to me got robbed. And it was insane. And I called the cops for both of them. And before that, I had never like witnessed a robbery or had to call the cops or anything like that. I hope this video wasn't too long. But anyway, this is the first story that I wanted to tell. So here it is. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.